Okay. Good morning, everyone. Uh, Thank you for joining another great day of Drupal GovCon 2021. We've got a lot of really good sessions today. So check out the schedule, see if there's anything you're interested in. I'm going to turn it over to Kayla, Brianna, and Phil, and they're going to talk about rapid prototyping for the web using the US web design system. Take it away.
Thanks, Jason. And thanks everyone for joining us this morning. Definitely super glad to have you here and to be talking about rapid prototyping and especially using USWDS. So we have a lot that we want to sort of get through and show you guys. We're going to do sort of a live demo workshop. If you have a GitHub account, you can definitely join in and sort of ride along with that. I put some links in the chat, both for a GitHub sign up. There's also a handout that just has some sort of additional information since we are going to move through some things pretty quick. And then also the slides as well. One more thing, we do have a poll up for this session just to kind of get a sense of our audience and just sort of general background, sort of, design versus development versus content and others. So if you have a minute and want to just hit one of those options in the poll, that would be great. So I will jump in. First, inspirational quote: "It isn't 10,000 hours that creates outliers, it's 10,000 iterations." So the inspiration for what we're doing here is really about being able to try out ideas in a very sort of real and tangible way in the browser very quickly. And there's a lot of great tools that enable you to do that. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. These are just some links that are sort of kind of get you prepped for the event. I'm not going to spend too much time here now, but just if you're going back to this later, kind of gives you some more context. So for our agenda, we're just going to talk a little bit about our team background and sort of, what we're doing and why. We're going to talk about a case study, which is an example of how we're sort of using these tools and techniques. And then that sets the stage for the actual sort of template workshop that we're going to walk through, showing you how you can take the project that we started and sort of reuse it and build on that for other situations. So first, some quick background. We're from Bixel. You probably may have seen some of us floating around. We're doing a couple other sessions here at Drupal GovCon. We've also got a booth. So definitely go check us out there and chat with some of our colleagues. Today, I'm joined by my colleague, Brianna Nalu. She's a UX designer at Bixel. Kayla Chumley is a Bixel alum. She's a UI designer at U Group now. And I'm Philip, the director of experience design at Bixel, where I lead the international development design team and also what we call the rapid response team, which is who we have here today. So for this team inside of Bixel, what we're really focused on is helping teams accelerate learning, reduce risk, and improve outcomes by making ideas more tangible more quickly using rapid web prototyping. And so as I was alluding to in the beginning, we're all about kind of making prototyping in the web more accessible to more people on the team. So content strategists, designers, etc. Why it's relevant for us. So we're a government contractor. We work on federal government projects. Some of you may be familiar with what's called the 21st Century IDEA or 21C. And this is sort of a mandate for federal agencies to be modernizing their websites and other aspects of their services, and also just improving customer experience overall. So we believe this is a good way to kind of operationalize that on our projects. And now I'm going to hand it over to Kayla to talk about our case study.
All right, can you guys see my screen?
Yep.
Great. Well, thank you, Philip, for that introduction. And again, welcome everybody. My name is Kayla Chumley. As Philip said, I'm a Bixel alum. I was a part of the rapid response team, and now I currently work at UGroup as a UI designer. So I'm going to go ahead and jump in and give you guys an overview of the HHS complaint screener case study, which is kind of a mouthful, and I'm sure you guys are wondering what exactly is the HHS complaint screener. So this is a form that was originally created by HHS, which is the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, with the goal to help the user to find a solution around their concerns with any topics related to healthcare HIPAA violations or anything they might think is a HIPAA violation. So the most visually apparent thing to note is the form component. The form is the core of the complaint screener layout. Without the form, we can't direct the user to a solution in a smooth manner. But with that being said, that doesn't mean that a government form has to be bulky or congested or overfilled with complicated terms, intentionally or not. Regardless, to get the user to that educated solution, it doesn't need to be clunky. So after choosing this particular form to experiment with and hopefully improve in the long run, we did keep two things in mind. And that was, how can we improve overall structure and user experience while still keeping in mind accessibility? And then how might we get people to the complaint form as soon as possible with the least amount of confusion? So this process, first we conducted a series of usability tests on the current screener. And then after receiving feedback on the current screener, we then built out our own ideas in Figma using USWDS components. Now, two components that we paid particular attention to in this ideation phase was the process list and the step indicator. While they were like very similar in aesthetics, they do play very different roles in function. The difference is the active logic flow and a multi-step process in one versus the other one was more of a stagnant instruction-like display of steps. So after analyzing those components, we went ahead and moved forward with what we thought was best. And we built out our prototype using those various USWDS components. Jekyll, for those of you who don't know, this is an open source static site generator and GitHub pages. Then we went through another round of user testing, which led us to repeat steps 2 through 4 as needed. And there'll be any room for questions at the end about this process. So I'm going to go ahead and move forward. So the scope consisted of redesigning our questions to be more clear and concise, adding a simple logic flow that allows for a faster, more productive process, adding linked resources to each question in case the user wants a deeper explanation of a term, rights, or HIPAA violation examples, just so we can make the form less congested overall. And then, of course, adding in that step indicator to show the user where they are in that process. And then, of course, using USWDS components so we wouldn't have to reinvent the wheel in a fast-paced prototyping environment. So I'm going to go ahead and show you guys what this portal looked like before. So this is the starting point of what HHS created. And you can see that it's very small point text, it's limited accessibility. It's not very mobile friendly. As you can see here, you scroll down and the questions is very tiny at the bottom. And you do have the constraints are all the way to the edge of the container, which is not best practice. And the information architecture in general just makes it very hard to scan the page and figure out where you're going. And each page is pretty similar in that the layout isn't super interesting. So I'm going to show you guys what our prototype looked like after we were done. So this is the end result. Some changed and added features to make note of as we go into this is firstly the step indicator at the top to show people where they are in that process. It makes it a lot smoother so you're not confused. The USWDS components for best accessible, responsive, and usable web experiences for government-focused sites like this one. And then we also used linked resources throughout, and we embedded these within these accordion components. So as you go through and answer the questions, you can see this one specifically at the bottom does have those linked resources here. And again, in this accordion, and then the previous accordion, you will close as you open a new accordion. And the questions are very clear and concise to what you need it to be. What is the main concern of your complaint? No extra added lingo that will confuse the user. And the simple logic flow, it goes from home to Q1 to then exit, depending on how you answer these questions, to Q2, exit if you also answered it incorrectly in terms of what they think is a HIPAA violation, or it'll take you all the way to that success page. So I'm going to go ahead and answer these as if we were at a success page. So yes, my privacy rights were violated. Next, has this incident occurred within the last 6 months? I'm going to go ahead and say yes, it has. Next, and here's our success page. Congratulations, you've completed this form, and this is the end of our prototype. And then I'll go over here and show you guys how it is mobile friendly. A lot easier to navigate than the. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and kick it off to Brianna.
While Brianna's pulling up her screen, I just wanted to add a little bit more kind of context to the prototype that, or the case study that Kayla was just talking about. So what this allowed us to do was, stand up a real website very quickly. I mean, the first iteration we did, just took a few days. I mean, less than a week really to get that first. And then we were able to do another round of user testing. And what that allowed us to do also was to kind of iterate on the content, very quickly, iterate on the sort of sequencing, the flow of the questions. And yeah, so where we see this kind of fitting in to a project workflow is in that very early kind of exploration stage where you are still thinking about content and general interactions, and just being able to iterate on that stuff in the browser using the same design system foundation that we'll be using for the production version of the project as well. So yeah, if you want to take it away, Brianna, and walk us through the actual prototype project.
Yeah. So again, everybody, it's Brianna here. So like Philip and Kayla mentioned, I'll be showing you how you can reuse our screener template for your own projects. So again, feel free to join us in GitHub when you're ready to go. But if not, that's okay. You can just watch me. So I'll be taking you through these steps individually. So we'll come back to this page so you guys aren't too lost, but I will be going through our repo now. So let's go ahead and get started with that. So I'm going to go ahead and open up this link here if you guys have this slides template website up. So go ahead and click that link and it should link you to that screener prototype, our screener prototype repository. If not, I'll also, oh, Philip beat me to it. So he's added that in the chat as well. So if you're following along, I guess I'll just go ahead and just start with, if you're not too familiar with GitHub, there are just 3 main sections I want to point out within the repository here. So the first one, of course, is this file section. So you'll see a ginormous amount of files, but don't be too intimidated if you're new to GitHub. And then of course we have over here the link to our GitHub pages. So if you open this up, it'll link you to that screener prototype that Kayla took you through and walked us through. So lastly, the third section that's really big in a repository is the README. And our README just has a bit of background of all the information that we um, had and that we've done throughout our project here for the screener prototype. We have the flow map that shows our logic flow, and then just some basic how-tos that I'll kind of walk you through this, but of course you can always just go back to our repository here when you have time afterwards. So let's go ahead and get started with that first step, which is to make a copy of a repository. So from here, we're gonna go ahead and just click this big bright green button that says use this template. And once I do that, I'm going to create new screener, and I have some copy ready, and it's going to be about the COVID booster shot. So I'm going to name my new repository COVID booster shot screener with a description that says, if I can get my copy copied. So my description that says a screener that informs if you're eligible to take the COVID-19 booster shot. So of course, I'm going to keep this public just to enable our GitHub pages. From there, we'll go ahead and just create a repository. So while that's generating, I'll go ahead and go back to our slides and just show you again where we are in our steps. We just simply made our copy of the repository here. So from here, we'll just to publish the site using GitHub pages. But before that, I guess I'll just see if there's any questions, but if not, we'll go ahead and move along. So I think we're okay. So for step 2, let's go back to our repository here. So for the GitHub pages, you're gonna wanna go to settings up here in this tab. And then all the way down on this left-hand side nav under pages, we're gonna wanna set our source here to the main branch and save all of that goodness there. And that generates us our new URL, which is our GitHub pages. So all of the changes that we make to our files, they'll all be pushed to this main branch, which it will be all that new changes that you created will be in this stuff. So this isn't set up yet, but we'll go ahead and get that done. So I copied this, I think, so I'll just go ahead and copy it again. And from here, I'll go back out to the code tab. And under this About widget on this right-hand side nav this time, I'm going to add that URL link, and I'll save my changes. And it should pop up. So we don't have any changes there yet, and there's one setting that we have to configure before you actually see anything there yet. But from there, that's our step 2, which is publish the site using GitHub pages. So super easy. Our site is now, or should now be published and publishable in GitHub pages. So going on to step 3 now, we're going to configure some global settings here in our repository. So for this one, we're going to want to go to the config file. So scrolling all the way down, we'll go to the config file here. And let me zoom in here so you guys can see all the tiny little text. All right, so we're going to click on the pencil icon to edit this file. We've added some inline comments just to help better guide you on what to put within these certain elements. Yep. So from here, we're going to just fix these required settings. So 3 things: the title, the description, and the base URL. So for the title, not too different from what I have my repository named. So the COVID-19 booster shot screener with that description, same description. That goes right here. I'm going to go ahead and paste that. And mine does have this special key character right here. So if you have that, no worries. Just wrap all of your text in these quotations. And lastly, we're going to want to change our base URL, which is super important because that's what helps generate our actual site, and all of the information will go there. And also super important, keep this / for the base URL. and we're gonna name it what our repository is, word for word. Alrighty, and with that, that's it. So we're gonna go ahead and save our changes. We're gonna back up a little bit. And that's it. That's our global settings. That everything should be hooked up now if we go back and click onto that GitHub Pages tab. So if we click it, site not found yet, but that's okay. All right. So is there any questions so far? I don't think so yet. So
Yeah, I don't see questions yet, Brianna, but I'll
mhm.
just while that site sort of building in the background, just wanted to add a note for those of you more familiar with kind of a software development workflow. Like you may be wondering, why are we doing all this stuff in the browser? Or maybe you're not wondering, but just to point out in case it's not obvious, the nice thing about this is that this allows us to get a live site up on a URL without worrying about sort of doing a local build on a machine and everything that goes along with that. That's how we work on this stuff, and we sort of have struggled through getting like Jekyll installed and figuring out the right version of Ruby and things like that. But that's not something that we want to sort of do all the time, and that is a pretty big barrier to enabling other people on the team to work with these tools. So that's what we like about GitHub and GitHub Pages, in that just getting people comfortable with editing Markdown files sort of gives them access to these kind of tools. Another thing that we've been playing around with a little bit recently, which looks really promising, is there's a tool called GitPod, and it basically, it's kind of similar to GitHub Code Spaces, if you're familiar with that, but it sort of just builds I don't know what they call like ephemeral dev environments, in the cloud. So you can sort of pre-configure all this stuff with whatever installations and dependencies you need, and with just a click of a button, you can spin up one of these repositories and then just sort of work on that in the browser, in the cloud, without needing to do anything on your local machine, really. So that's something we're definitely interested in playing around with, just to make spinning up these prototypes, even that much quicker and easier for people to get into.
Awesome. Thank you, Philip. So I went ahead and opened up that GitHub Pages, and the only thing that we'll see for right now is just the changes that we made to our global site settings within that config file, which was just changing the title. So here's our title, the new one for our screener, which is the COVID-19 booster shot screener. And from there, we'll move on to step 4, which is to edit a question content. So for that one, let me go ahead and exit out of here. So back in our repository files, we're going to want to go through and try to find a question file. So we named our exit files, which takes us out of the logic flow, Q1, Q2, and Q3. So these three those are the 3 questions that you can edit and make changes to for the exit pages. Then we have our question files, which is for the questions, of course, and then our success page. So all of that is editable. And so we'll go into question 1 and change this. So again, I'll go ahead and zoom in for you guys, edit the widget, and underneath all this content, we can change our text here. So let's go ahead and do that. So my first question that I'm going to ask is, are you considered a moderately to severely immunocompromised person? And for the first answer, it's going to be within these quotation marks. Yes, I am immunocompromised. And instead of question 2, it's going to lead us to the success page instead. And then for the second option, it's going to be no, I am not immunocompromised. And this one is actually going to lead us to the next question, which is question 2. So super easy for people who are not really development, don't have too much development knowledge. So maybe someone with more design background to just kind of come in, plug and play, and get a prototype up running super quickly. So with that all saved, we're going to go back out to the code tab. And this again might take some time to load, but we'll go ahead and see if any changes have been made to our GitHub pages site. And yes, it happened pretty quickly this time. So here you'll see the first question has been changed to the new text that I added. And if I click on the yes, I am immunocompromised, it should take us to our success page. And if I go back, then no, I am not immunocompromised should take us to the next question in the logic flow. So certainly it does just that. So from there, again, I'll go ahead and just see if there's any other questions in the chat. If not, we'll go ahead and move right along. I think we're doing pretty well. No questions is a good sign. So is to change that homepage image, and we'll go ahead and do just that. So back within our repo, I'm going to go, I'm going to go all the way down back into that config file here. Open that right on up. Zoom in once more. Click that pencil icon again. And instead of the required settings this time, we're going to go to the content settings. And so for our homepage image, we're actually going to change this. And I just realized I did not add a new homepage image yet. So let's actually do that first. So we'll cancel our changes. We'll go back out to our code tab. So first we'll go to our assets folder and then the image folder within that, and we'll add a file. So I'll upload a file. I'll choose my file. And it's going to be these cute little bandages with all these web stacks. I'll go ahead and just copy this in advance, the image link, and I'll save that image. So now that image is uploaded to our image file within the assets file. We'll go back into that config file now. I apologize in advance. Zoom back in, edit, and under content, we're gonna move that path so it goes to our bandages.jpg. So again, super important to have all this kept here and then add in our new image here. And with that, we go ahead and save our changes. And that's it. That should render our new homepage image for us. So let me go ahead and, again, that will take some time.
Yeah, I'll just buy us a little bit of time while that is kind of rebuilding in the background. One thing I was going to add, just another aspect that we like about this workflow, particularly for being able to test and iterate on content, is typically when you're working in a design tool like Sketch or Figma, it starts to get pretty complicated when you have your content living in the design tools. I mean, you can either try to keep them in sync as content is changing and you're sort of testing that out with design as you go. The other side of that is sometimes people just won't use real content at all, and you just sort of get you have Greek text in there, and then you run into issues where your sort of designers have envisioned something that doesn't really take into account realistic content, and things sort of start falling apart once you get into implementation and production, and you're putting that into a real site. So yeah, the nice thing about this again is that we're creating and storing content in sort of a simple plain text format. You've got all of the kind of version control features built in that you get with Git. So you can, there's like clearly sort of an audit trail of like what changed, and you can sort of track comments as you go. So people are sort of on the same page with, you know, what you're doing, what the latest thing is, and sort of why it changed. And then it also, you're kind of storing content in a pretty robust format. You know, in Markdown, it can sort of easily be transported, you know, exported into other systems and, you know, services as needed. So yeah, that's another benefit. And I can see our site has rebuilt in the background on GitHub Pages there, and there's our new background image.
Yeah. So we have our new title change. Our background image has uploaded and refreshed, and then we have our question. So super easy for someone who's not super tech savvy, like a designer or with comes from like a designer background or whatnot, to just jump in, create something really simple, really easy, super quickly, super quickly. So with that, I'll go back to our slides now. So we were able to just, as a short recap, made a copy of the repository, um, created enabled GitHub pages, configured a few site settings, edited the question page, edit a question page, and then we changed the homepage image. And from there, what you can try next, if you want to dive a little bit deeper, just try editing a new question or adding a new question, and then playing and editing around with the other questions with Markdown. And if you're not too familiar with Jekyll or the layout that Jekyll uses, I highly recommend just playing with the Jekyll layouts with the USWDS utility classes. So all that information is linked here. And with that, I'm going to hand it back off to you, Philip. Thanks, guys.
Good job on the live demo with GitHub there. That's actually been working out pretty well. So let's see, just make sure screen's back up. Yeah, and just as a quick side note, so the slides that we're kind of taking you through here, these slides are a USWDS website with just some kind of custom pixel branding layered on top. So, you know, as we've been becoming more familiar with these tools and, you know, enjoying getting things into the browser and working on them there, we were like, hey, why not just put our slides in the browser as well? So yeah, pretty much anything we can turn into the USWDS website, we're interested in doing that at this point. So just some takeaways. Again, like why rapid web prototyping? If you're still skeptical, if you're not sure, these are sort of the, you know, the big reasons why we think this is useful and something to incorporate into your teams and your projects. One is that you just, you know, you learn things faster and you get sort of alignment faster, because as much sort of mock-ups and, you know, prototypes, static prototypes, and you know, sort of documentation that you do, there's some things that you're just not going to know or figure out until you start kind of trying to build it. And so we really like to start this process, start, you know, these activities as soon as possible, you know, in a project, so that we can benefit from seeing things coming together. That reduces risk, because it does force alignment. It does force questions and agreement on, you know, what we're actually building and how that's going to work and how that comes together. So the earlier you can do that, the more iterations you can go through, the less risk you're going to have at the end. And ultimately, it should, you know, improve the outcome, because this also allows you to test very realistic versions of what you're envisioning with users as you go in, you know, on different devices, with interactivity, with real content. So that helps you ensure that you're actually solving the right problem, meeting users' needs as you go. And so some next steps, if you're interested in sort of playing around with these tools some more, these are some links in here that take you to some of the stuff. And I did put a link to these slides in the chat in the beginning. I can throw that in again, or if Brianna or Kayla, if one of you wants to grab that as well. So yeah, again, this is just a site you can go to. So we just have some links in here. Definitely recommend getting familiar with Markdown if you're not already. If you're not into development, I would say that's even a better place to start than HTML or CSS. Because to do this kind of prototyping, as you saw with Brianna's demo, we're really not looking at HTML and CSS. That's all sort of being taken care of in the background or with the sort of foundation of the US web design system. So it does come into play to sort of build out some of those templates, and really all we're doing there is just using code snippets that are available on the USWDS website. So just using sort of plain vanilla component code. So we don't really need to understand those too much to enable these tools. So really Markdown is a good place to start because that's what allows you to sort of create and edit the content that gets fed into those templates. We also have a couple of templates here that just sort of give you a really basic starting point for using USWDS. We didn't talk about CodePen here, but that's a really easy way to get started. That's sort of a code playground in the browser. And so for that template that we have set up, it's just referencing the compiled USWDS framework. So that makes it really easy to just sort of play around. Again, you can copy and paste component code as we have in the next link there. You can just put those things right into CodePen and they will render for you right there in the browser. And then you can swap out content, things like that. So it makes it very easy to just sort of learn about the design system, get familiar with the components, how they sort of respond to different devices, different screen sizes, how they respond to different types of content. So yeah, it just makes it super easy for designers and other people on the team to just sort of get more familiar with the system and to have a better idea of how the design intent will sort of be implemented. And then if you want to go further, USWDS has a whole sort of framework of design tokens that enable you to sort of easily customize the system. And if you're a developer, you're probably more familiar with and more comfortable with, say, doing your own build and editing, SAS variables and sort of compiling all that. In this case, for prototyping, it's also very easy with the utility classes. So once you get to the point where you are sort of more comfortable with how some of those templates look, how those code snippets work with the HTML elements, it's pretty easy to just use some of those classes to start tweaking things. You sort of get access to the different elements of design that affect each component. So things like width and height, and for typography, things like sizing, color, obviously, and then some other things like shadows, things like that. So you can, there's a lot you have access to. It's not everything, but a lot you can do just sort of at the, I guess what you would call with the compiled CSS, the default CSS, without having to do your own build. And lastly here, we just have a list of some resources, just linking out to USWDS. There's a really good Markdown guide there from GitHub, links to GitHub and Jekyll, and then links for us if you wanted to reach out and had any follow-up questions. And with that, that concludes our slides. We're looking good on time here, so I'm just going to hop back over here, just see if we had some other Q&A.
Yeah, there was one question, and I dropped the link in there, but I wanted to also let you know and see if you had any other input. Does the US Digital Design System, does it have a site where you can, similar to Tailwind, the Tailwind UI, where you can browse available components?
Yeah, yeah. Thanks, Jason. That is the best link there for USWDS. So yeah, I would definitely recommend that for kind of familiarizing yourself with the components and what's available, as well as the code snippets. In terms of Figma, there is a Figma community file. There's a really nice one that we've been using and kind of playing around with from a company called Truss put together. And I think we can find that. We might be able to find that quickly. Yeah, so they've built out in Figma, representations of all these components. So that's a nice tool to use as well when you're just sort of initially sketching out some ideas. As Kayla mentioned, we did use that as a part of our workflow before jumping into the Jekyll site. Let's see, there's a couple other questions here. This is just your dev site when you go into production.
Flooding in now, aren't they?
Can you pull from this repo, build into? Yeah, so Michael is asking, like, when you get into production, is there something we can pull from this server or from this sort of project? For that, it really depends on like what the ultimate technology stack of the project is going to be. I mean, we are doing a lot of projects in Drupal, and we're still in kind of early phases with like piloting these tools and techniques and trying them out. So that's something for us to definitely explore further, and looking at like how to do that transition. It's not, I mean, I still think there is value. There's still value and benefit into us using these tools, even if there's not a way for us to do that ultimately, because again, these are prototypes, and we're not concerned about necessarily, particularly the code. But the purpose of building a prototype is to answer specific questions that you have. And so this can be completely throwaway and not something that we necessarily sort of have flow right into our production environment or our real implementation. And so that's part of what we're trying to do here, is like lower the technology barriers and lower the time to seeing and testing these ideas in the browser, so that we can answer questions quickly, learn from them, and then go on. So if this were to do nothing else but just help us learn something for what we ultimately implement, that's great. If there's some other things that we can do to say, reuse, say, some of our content files with Markdown, which seems like it should be feasible, that would just sort of be icing on the cake.
Two questions in here from Irene. One is, are you mostly using this rapid prototyping for internal review or also with end users?
Yeah, so we definitely want to be putting this in front of actual users, or representative users, as much as possible. So that's one of the main benefits for us, is that this stuff is going out to a live site on a URL. We did some unmoderated remote testing, so you can just send that out to like a user testing service and have people go through your site that way. You could also just stand next to someone and have them pull it up on their phone. So yeah, that's a big benefit for us, is that we can test it with real users as we go. And then
when building the real site and need to overwrite some US web design system components, what tool do you use to build?
So again, that is going to depend on the project and the technology stack. And so, everything that we're kind of talking about here, this is all happening sort of in the design phase, in the exploration phase for us. So we would be, when it comes to actual implementations, we're going to be working within the context of a fully staffed team with front end, back end developers, and so they're going to do the heavy lifting of actually building the site and doing the build, the sort of customized build of USWDS. Yeah.
And this one is one that I have some experience in, so I'm interested to hear your answer. How easy is it to convert US web design system into Drupal sites?
Okay, I will try. I will say something here, but Jason, you feel free to jump in, because so I do not, I don't have a lot of experience building Drupal sites. In fact, probably zero. So, but I've been around it, and I've been working with our team at Bixel that has a lot of experience with that. I would say definitely, if you haven't, find our booth and pop in there, and hopefully one of our developers would be over there and can answer that question in a more detailed way. So I don't think it's necessarily about converting, but there are certainly tools. There's a USWDS module or sort of theme module for
Right.
Drupal that takes the USWDS components and sort of templatizes them in a way that makes it easier to bring it into Drupal. But yeah, I don't know, Jason, if you have some other details you want to add there.
No, that's exactly what I was going to mention. There are, I think, one or two themes that are built on the design system, and I've certainly worked on several projects that have used those as a base for building kind of a new theme. I've also done Drupal projects where you're kind of incorporating that from scratch and building your own theme. The digital design system is pretty easy to integrate. You would need to do some work with SAS and kind of placement of some markup. But yeah, the web design system theme is a good starter for it.
Yeah, and I'll also just plug the USWDS Slack channel. You can, I don't know, maybe if someone can grab the URL, you could probably find it pretty easily. It's on the USWDS site. I see there's a comment from my colleague James in the session chat here. So if you have more questions about USWDS and like how to use that, how to incorporate that into Drupal, definitely go hop on the Slack channel. James is there. He's on the USWDS core team, and there's a bunch of other people there who are using this stuff with Drupal and can help you out with more detailed questions on that.
Okay, that might be it for the questions, unless anyone has anything else.
Cool. Well, yeah, thanks again, everyone, for joining us. Appreciate your time and your feedback and questions here. It was great for us to share this stuff with you, and certainly feel free to reach out if you have any other questions. Thanks.
Thank you so much, y'all.
Thanks, Jason.